Welcome to YogiViews, where my guest is yoga itself, through interviewing those who practice it, teach it, sell it, or simply love it. I am Antonio Sausis. This is the second part of a two-part show where I'm interviewing Kramer. We say that it is not possible for the eye to see itself. It's not possible for the hand to grab itself. How can we understand our minds with our minds?
Well, what else do you suggest?
Not that
I mean, given that's all we have,
we use it the best way we can.
We use it the best we can. What you're asking, I think, is how can we be certain that we're not involved in just more projections of mind?
Exactly, another mind.
Well, you know, my answer to that is that in these realms, the very idea of looking for certainty is part of the limitation. It's like you can't be certain. But what you can be is sensitive to feedback. And that if the feedback of what you're doing mentally or physically brings an openness, brings a different kind of way of connecting, in the world, with people, with our Weltanschauung, with what's going on in the world today, and being part of the evolutionary momentum. You see, the thing that I feel, and I feel that yoga is one of the things, certainly not the only thing that can participate this, I feel that we are on a cusp where we have to evolve socially. And that evolution is putting us a great test as to whether or not we will or not. And, and for me, the feedback of being able to move more gracefully in social domains is a sign that I'm on the right track. It's not a guarantee. I feel in these domains there are no guarantees. There's only the process of living and the process of being able to, to sort out, because the mind is very facile in fooling itself.
Yes.
It is. It's very fast. Or in telling itself what it wants to hear.
Exactly.
So that another feedback is that if I find my mind resisting seeing something, and if for whatever reason it breaks through, and I see the reason why I am resisting seeing it, is seeing myself in this light doesn't make me very comfortable. And that's feedback that I'm on to something. If something comes through that makes me really question, how I've been looking at things in a broader light, that's feedback that I'm on to something. It's not proof, and it doesn't mean that I can't be fooling myself on another level, because they say that the price of freedom is constant vigilance. And I would add to this that the price of awareness is constant vigilance.
Yes. Now, you just mentioned something that interests me, because just as the mind resists, the body sometimes resists. And in fact, you have spoken about this playing the edge as a way of hearing the wisdom of the body when we are on that edge, and how we are with it. And we certainly have techniques in Hatha Yoga to overcome the resistance of the body, and to stretch further, or to rest more, or to...
Up to a point.
Up to a point.
Yes.
Does Jnana Yoga, or in your experience, what would be a good technique from the mental yoga to deal with the resistances of the mind, which are a very big thing? Even Patanjali, back in when he was talking about how to overcome suffering, he said that the mind is going to resist.
Well, let me just say one thing, about this. And here is where I differ, for example, from a lot of tradition. And I've asked this, I've asked people this. I have say, almost everybody can look back into their memory and see places where they can say to themselves, I've really grown. Very few people, cannot do this. Then I ask this question, was the growth suffering-free? And almost exclusively the answer is no.
Yeah.
And then I say, well, do you think you would have grown if you hadn't suffered? And they say no, so that I don't look at suffering as something to be done away with. I look at it as part of a growth process, basically. So that, the first thing in terms of this whole question of resistance in the mind is to become aware of where the resistance lives. Not trying to make it go away, or not trying to, resist the resistance, so to speak.
Yes.
Right? But to actually see where the resistance lives. If you see where the resistance lives clearly, that seeing, like any seeing, it's like opens up the spectrum of possibility, opens up the spectrum of where you can move in ways that your conditioning patterns didn't even know existed. So that again, I'm here talking about a process, a process of being in touch with what is. And if I'm resistant, that's what is. And if I can see this without trying to change it, or without trying to judge it, or saying, well, I shouldn't have this resistance, or anything like that, then I'm really not looking at it totally. I'm looking at it through the filter of my preference of not having it.
Yes.
Right. And that's another example of how preference is a filter.
Is a filter. And wouldn't this be another example of how seeing something already changes you as a seer?
Yes.
Because once you've identified the resistance, then you're already less resistant.
Then that's right. It's like you're less resistant. And if you become curious about the nature of the resistance, then it can open up doorways to show you, one of the things that I saw for myself is that I resisted the fact that, and I take it to be a fact now, I was really resisting the fact that many of the things that I was trying to escape because I had a negative judgment about them, things like jealousy, things like anger, things like vengeance, or this subtle thing that they call schadenfreude, where you take pleasure out of somebody else's little pains here and there. And I saw that I'm not free of these human things, and the only way that I can move through them is if I become very alert and very aware of how they operate in me. Taking pleasure in somebody else's pain didn't fit my self-image of who I want to be. And then I saw that almost on automatic, if somebody did something to you that you don't like, then if they suffer a little bit, it gives you a little bit of pleasure. And then if you can see that, then it takes some of the pleasure you're getting out of that experience away, which, was something I wanted.
Yes,
basically.
exactly. What diminishes what you're trying to. Yes.
So these are just examples of, of what.
Well, but this is wonderful because the yoga that we can read in a book, or that we can connect with some sadhu or sage coming down from a cave, is different in a way from this other practical examples where we are bringing yoga to.
Well, you see that that was my that was my thing. You see, in the beginning, I took much of yoga, tradition as a given, and one of the things that I was really attempting to do is, to get rid of my ego. And I was, I was struggling, and I had a moment where I even convinced myself I had, right? Until I saw that no, I didn't get rid of my ego. I still have an ego, and then I was faced with a choice. The choice was either there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with the whole structure that is asking a human being to do that. And being I still had an ego, I went for the second thing. There's nothing wrong with me. I think that ego is, part of what we develop as we develop identities. And that I became interested in the nature of identities and how identities can be narrow or broad. And in my evolutionary perspective, what we need now is not to have less ego, but to have broader identities. So that because what you identify with is what you care about. And right now, as a species, we need to identify in much broader ways because we need to care about a lot more things than our own individual well-being or even the well-being of those in our immediate
community.
Community. We need to broaden our spectrum if we're going to learn how to live in on a planet that is truly going global. And for me, what global means is that impact is no longer local. So that when Japan has its atomic crisis, this doesn't only affect Japan, it affects the world, in some ways. And that in order to really care about this, then your identity has to broaden.
Yes.
And and that's one of the things that I feel is rather essential and necessary.
You spent quite a long time without teaching.
Yes.
And you came back to teaching, and I have read in an article that one of the reasons why you came back to teaching was because you felt that the world needed more of the yoga or more of the knowledge, or
well, I would put it a slightly different way. I wouldn't say the world needed more of me. I wouldn't say that at all. But what I did say is that in these critical times, if anybody has anything they think might be useful, it's time to throw your 2 cents into the pot.
Yes.
And whether my 2 cents has relevance for other people, that's not my call. It's their call, basically. And that's one of the major reasons I started teaching again.
And the reason why I bring this up is because you have mentioned that we are at an interesting evolutionary moment where, as social individuals or as a species that is social, we are kind of being tested whether we're going to make it or not.
That's what I think.
What does yoga bring to our moment that can help us evolve positively?
Now, in my experience, with people who have done yoga, it would be nice to say that yoga is a panacea and all you have to do is do yoga and it'll all open up for you. I can't say that. I don't think that's true. I think that what yoga is, as I said earlier, I think yoga is an energy game. And what I mean by that is that it brings energy and it, breaks through energy blockages. But you see, the energy can be utilized in many different ways. It can be utilized to, meet this evolutionary challenge that we're facing, or it can be used to put oneself on a pedestal and, say, look how wonderful I am.
Bathe in entitlement.
But it is a tool for really opening up and allowing not only the energy that you have, but allowing the energy that is around you, to come in and be part of who you are And you see, the thing that I feel is this. Each and every one of us, in a very real way, is confined or locked into the reality of our own experience. You know, this is what we have.
Yeah.
This is what we know.
This is what we know.
Right. But if you look very, very, very deeply, that there is a part of every human being, I feel, who hasn't been either frightened or beaten or scared out of it. There is something inside that wants to break out of that isolation and connect with something larger and perhaps more meaningful than merely me and my own existence or my own likes or dislikes. And I think the energy of yoga allows you to get in touch with that, and allows that kind of breakthrough to happen. But I don't feel that it is, I don't feel that it is a possession. In other words, I break through, but I don't have anything I'm possessing. It's not like I'm possessing. It's a momentum that moves me. You see, this is one of the reasons when I talk about spirituality, I don't talk about it as a property of a human being, so that through practices you can become more and more and more spiritual until you hit the pinnacle of spirituality, whatever that means.
That is. Yes.
No, I don't look at it as something we can possess. I look at it as something we can connect with and participate in. And through that connection, it does move us, and then we do integrate it, but it's not something that I own. So that, when I hear people talk about X is more spiritual than Y, it doesn't have any meaning for me at all. What does have meaning is how, how people connect and further the potentials that we have. Imagine if we lived in a world where we really emotionally felt that as we met people walking down the street, that everything else being equal, they're interested in helping us if they can, instead of squashing us down so that they can be above us. Basically, that would be a very different world. If, and of course I'm not, presenting this as an ultimate possibility, but I am presenting this as a way we have to move. We have to move in ways that helping each other become more aware, helping each other to live a life that has within it, both grace and hope, is part of, what the species needs. We have to learn how to care about each other. We have to learn how to care about the environment. We have to become caretakers instead of merely takers. And, I feel that yoga is one route, certainly not the only route. And there's no guarantee in it, basically, because, it's very, very easy to utilize whatever accomplishments one has to prop oneself up.
Yes.
Because, there is a part of us, I think a part of most of us, that wants to feel in one way or another special. And I feel that we all are in one way or another special. And that, can yoga help you get in touch with that specialness? Yes, it can. Can it inflate you? Yes, it can. It's like any powerful tool. Any powerful tool can cut in different directions.
Yes. And it depends greatly on the operator.
And it depends on the operator. And it depends also on the environment the operator is operating in.
Yes, yes. So you would say that one of the key components where yoga can help us with this evolutionary moment then is connection, as you said, and a broader awareness or a broader spectrum of interest and identification, where by yoga saying that we are all one, we can identify with the wholeness rather than with our little world or moment.
Right, but you see, the thing is that I also feel that although we're all one and interconnected, we also are separate with boundaries.
Yes.
You know, both are true. This is where the dialectic meets, or where the rubber hits the road, as you know, and where choices are made. I mean, who do I put first, me or you? Mm-hmm. Who do I put first? My family, my community, my country, or broader things. And of course, there's always a jockeying, and there's no, you see, the problem here is there's no formula.
We are making it.
That's right. It's really a function of the awareness that you bring, to whatever moment you're facing in one sense or other. Mm-hmm. And can yoga be helpful in being more aware? Yes, it can be. Mm-hmm. It can be.
Now, yoga brings in a third aspect that you just mentioned, which is the spirit. Mm-hmm. And when we hear the word spirit, some people feel uncomfortable. Some people don't even know what we're talking about.
Well, actually, I use the word, with some real tentativeness, because it's such a semantically laden word. Mm-hmm. It has so many layers that it's laden, and so many different, definitions. And that part of the process that me and my partner Diana, who presumably will be here later, is, bringing spirituality down to earth, instead of it being something out there that you have to strive for to become. I'll tell you a story. I was talking to a, rather prominent, genetic biologist. And, he ever asked me if I ever had a mystical experience or something like this. And I said, well, yes, I had. And he said to me, there's no way in the world you'll ever convince me that I have a spirit. And I said to him, gee, there's no way in the world I'd ever try to do that. I don't believe I have a spirit. I believe I am a spirit. Mm-hmm. And that's different. Mm-hmm. That means that, you don't have to go out there and become something you're not. You have to allow something you are to flower. Mm-hmm. And that's a different point of view.
Very much so. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And is one that I think that in many ways yoga expresses, that this union, this unit, this integration, we already are. It's not that we are creating it when we are naming it or when we are becoming aware of it. It's just that we are understanding it or seeing it, but we already are. And perhaps in the same way we already are a mind, a body, and a spirit.
Well, it's like, to me, these things are integrated. They're not out there, and we are, mm-hmm. in my opinion, we are what existence manufactures out of itself. Mm-hmm. That's what we are, mm-hmm. each and every one of us. Mm-hmm. And to the extent that we can begin to understand the processes that are involved in being human, then we begin to understand, perhaps in, not a total way, but in a larger way, what the meaning and importance of existence and evolution is all about. Because, from my perspective, existence is busy creating parts of itself that can self-reflect on its wonder and miraculousness. And, and without being able to do that, what's the point of it anyway? Now, some might argue, and and one can argue cogently that it's really all pointless. However, for it to really be all pointless and yet to be involved in what I consider to be the miracle of experiencing, the miracle of being able to, it's like take in, the beauty, and to whatever extent we can, the connectivity around us is not an accident, but is rather, part of the momentum of evolution that we are a participant in. And that, from our perspective, what we need is to become more conscious participants in that process.
More aware.
More aware.
I would like to ask you about the future. and I originally wanted to tell you, where is yoga going? I am now more inclined to ask you, where are we going? But I'm going to leave it at the yoga level, if you want. Where do you think yoga is going?
It's like because of its nature, because of the nature of yoga, I feel that yoga will continue to spread, and that will continue to have offshoots, because especially since we're dealing here in the West anyway, we're dealing with an aging populace. And it's something that you can, do into old age. So that, I look at it as spreading and becoming part of, the tools that we have available to us. Other people might find other tools for themselves more appropriate. That's not my call. But I see it becoming a tool available, for energy and actually for, for personal health too. I mean, it has personal value. I think it has social value. Yes. And and one of the things that I've seen is that the old foundations for community are breaking down. And that, one of the things, in talking to people, one of the things that yoga has brought to people is a sense of community.
Yes.
And as I said, we're social animals, and we, being a participant in a community is, I mean, it's like
human.
It's
very,
human.
Very
it's
human.
very human.
Yes,
Yes.
very human.
That's
yes.
right.
Well, Joel, two things. First of all, I want to thank you in the name of yoga and the world, because just as in a relay, right? That's the name of the race that won. Okay. Every participant in such race is important, and you have had your part, obviously, and you continue to have it. And you watched yoga in one shape, you helped develop in another shape, and now you're talking about the future. And I'm sure that in a way, or in many ways, you are part of that. So I want to thank you for that. On the other hand, as all things start, they come to an end. And I will commit you to bring your partner, Diana, for our next show, because I definitely want to talk with you and with her about this yoga of relationship that you guys have developed and that continue to work with. And I thank you for this time, for being here with us today, for coming and for being willing to speak your truth and the fruit of your work. And I definitely hope to have you with us then again very soon, and with Diana.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm sure you'll enjoy Diana as I do.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you
very much.
Mm-hmm.
This was Joel Kramer. Joel is a yoga author and pioneer whose teaching aims at making yoga relevant for our times and the needs of our times, by freeing yoga and spirituality from their authoritarian roots. Joel had helped and elicit, in a way, the very important emergence of creativity that marks and had marked our contemporary understanding of yoga. I hope you enjoy this show, and if you want to say something to me, please shoot me an email at antonio@yogiviews.com, and I look forward to seeing you the next time.